What's up, everybody? What's up, everybody? Y'all awake? Okay, they're not awake. Maybe we'll wake up here in a minute. Hey, look, if you happen to have a Bible with you, we're gonna flip over to John chapter 1. So just to introduce myself, my name is Kyle Stringer. I am the youth pastor and associate pastor at Union Baptist Church, just on the other side of Picayune. I am from Poplarville, and what they say, when God was creating everything, He's creating the world, He's creating the United States, and He creates, all the states, and while He's working on Mississippi, He creates Picayune, and He gives Picayune to New Orleans, so all the New Orleans people can come to us. And then He creates Carrier, and He gives it to the Chalmatians. And then He creates Poplarville, and it's there He decides to stay. And so that's where I'm from. I'm from God's country. I grew up in Poplarville, went to Poplarville High School, played football there. Growing up, I went to a church there in Poplarville periodically, not every Sunday, but my parents would bring me every now and then. And so this was my view of church growing up. I don't know if you had the same view, but this was my view. I thought church was boring. I thought that, I had to listen to, some old guy talk about an old book with, full of old people, and it just wasn't, what I liked. There were too many rules. Right? I had to wear, an itchy turtleneck shirt every time we went, which looking back, I'm like, Mom, what were you thinking? Right? Why a turtleneck? We go and my mom always made me spit out my gum. I don't know why that sticks out in my mind, but my mom was always like, no, you can't chew gum in church, right? You got to spit it out before you go in. That's rude. Don't chew gum. And so I would go in. I had to stay quiet, for like an hour, which for an ADHD kid like myself was very difficult, as some might testify to. And so my negative view of church was only overshadowed by my negative view of God. I thought that God was an over-strict dictator that just wanted us to be silent and obey. That's what I viewed God as. And then I get to middle school into 7th and 8th grade, and I'm playing football, and I'm trying to find my way in life, and I start struggling severely with anxiety and depression. It actually cripples me. I would find myself, watching TV on a Saturday morning and just had this anxiety attack rush over me. And there was nothing I could do to stop it. I mean, anybody in middle school here? Anybody 7th, 8th grade? Yeah, so when I was your age, I would be sitting there watching TV just break out in tears and panic and just crippling anxiety. Right? And so my mom would come in trying to calm me down, but she couldn't, and it would just take forever for me to finally calm down. And to my relief, and during that time in my life, we had stopped going to church. We went during Christmas and Easter, but any other time we wouldn't go. And so to overcome these mental struggles that I was dealing with, at least what I thought were mental struggles, I tried, getting more into football, right? Trying to throw myself into that. Video games, friends, whatever it was, any distraction that I could hold on to, I chased after. I didn't know why I was hurting. I just knew I was hurting. I knew there was something wrong in my life. And it got so bad that for some reason I had this idea in my head, like maybe I could try church again. Maybe I could just try it one more time. And so, I asked my mom. I said, hey, could we go to church this Sunday? And she's like, yeah, sure. And so we go. And in the middle of the service, I have a panic attack. And it got so bad that I'm just weeping in the middle of the church. And my mom has to take me out. Right? That's how bad it had gotten. And in that moment, I realized that church was not for me and God could not help me. I was certain about it. Well, my sister, who's about 8 years older than me, around that time, she had started dating a guy. His dad was a pastor here in Picayune, actually. And they started inviting me to church in the youth group there. And that helped a little bit because it gave me a good laugh. Right? I was like, okay, yeah, I tried that, been there, done that, didn't work. And so he insisted. He kept saying, like, come and see, come and see, come and see. And so finally I broke down and I went on a Wednesday night. And whenever I got there, it was so different than what I was expecting. I had never been into a youth group before. And so I walk in and everyone's wearing t-shirts and shorts or maybe jeans, right? Nobody is in an itchy turtleneck. People are chewing gum, which surprised me, right? I thought that was, a sin to chew gum in church. And every single person, when I walked in, they wanted to say hello. They wanted to say hey to me. They wanted to talk to me. And then the youth pastor, he starts preaching, and he's excited about what he's saying. He's talking like he knows something about my life. Because he starts talking about anxiety. He starts talking about how he deals with depression and how Jesus is his strength and his shield. I wanted to know how that was possible. I wanted to know how he got what he got. I wanted to know how he had joy in the struggles that I was dealing with. How he found peace in his anxiety, peace in his brokenness. And so over the next few months, I kept going to try and figure out what he was talking about. How he overcame those things, the things that are tormenting me daily. And then one day, hanging out in the parsonage, which is the house that the church owns, with the pastor and his son and my sister, they asked me, they say, hey, do you want to get saved? Do you want to ask Jesus into your life? Because that's how all that happens. That's how, Jesus starts to work. And I was like, sure, yeah, I would love to start that. And so right then and there, they pray with me, and I pray, and I told Jesus all about the bad things that I had done. I told him that I needed his help, and because I felt broken inside. And most importantly, I told him that I recognize him as my Lord, right, the one true God, and as my Savior, the one who died and rose again. So in that moment, I gave my heart and life to Jesus. And like I said, I didn't fully understand all the fine details of what that meant to be saved. I didn't, understand everything, but I knew I felt different. I knew something had changed, and I didn't realize it was happening. But after, several months, I looked back, and I started thinking, when was the last time I had an anxiety attack? When was the last time that I felt that crippling fear and that just extreme depression? See, the moment that I was saved, John 3 tells us that we are reborn into new life. And as I grew in that new life, I started to consider the things of God. I started to think about God differently. And I started to realize that whenever those things came up, I could give them over to him. I could say, Jesus, please take this. And you know what? He would. He would take it. He would work in my life every single day. And in the 11th grade, I realized that he wanted me to tell other people about it. He wanted me to go into the ministry. And I told my pastor and youth pastor, and they let me shadow them. And in the first semester of my sophomore year of college, God allowed me to become a youth pastor right there at Mill Creek Baptist Church in 2020, and then in 2021 to come to Union where I am now. And so now I get to work with students. I get to be a part of their lives and explain to them what God did in my life. And I want to share with y'all a real quick passage. And at the end of this passage is what I consider my life verse, the thing that changed my life. When I read this, I realized everything that Jesus could do. Right? I realized who he really is. And it's in John chapter 1, starting verse 43. It says, the next day, Jesus decided to leave for Galilee. And he found Philip. And he said, follow me. And now Philip was from Bethsaida, the hometown of Andrew and Peter. Philip found Nathanael and told him, we have found the one Moses wrote about in the law, and so did the prophets, Jesus, the son of Joseph, from Nazareth. Can anything good come out of Nazareth? Nathanael replied. I'm going to repeat that. Can anything good come out of Nazareth? Nathanael replied. Come and see, Philip here. Y'all hear that? Come and see, Philip said. Come and see, Philip said. Then Jesus saw Nathanael coming toward him and said about him, here is an Israelite in whom there is no deceit. How do you know me? Nathanael asked. Before Philip called you, when you were under the fig tree, I saw you. Rabbi, Nathanael replied, you are the Son of God. You are the King of Israel. And And Jesus responded to him, "Do you believe because I saw you under the fig tree?" And here it is. This is my life verse. This is the one that I cling to. Jesus says, "You will see greater things than this." And so working through that passage, working through that text, we see a few things that I want to point out real quick. First of all, Nathanael says, "Can anything good come out of Nazareth?" See, Nathanael, he was Jewish. He had went to Hebrew school where he had to learn about God, where, what we call the Old Testament, they just called it the Testament, right? He had to learn about God growing up. He thought he knew the Messiah. He thought he knew what God was supposed to be like when he came to earth. He had a false view of God, just like I did. Just like many of us do, up until the point that we come face to face with him. Up until the point that we actually meet him and learn who he is. As Nathanael approached Jesus, Jesus made it clear that he knew him. How could Jesus have known him if they had never met? Because Jesus had been there with him all along, waiting for Nathanael, waiting for me, waiting for some of you to realize he's there and to say, "Lord, save me." Jesus explains to Nathanael that he saw him under the fig tree, and that was enough for Nathanael. See, Nathanael, he was completely alone. He was completely isolated. He was completely, alone under this fig tree, and now he's realizing that Jesus was there the whole time. That he was never actually alone, but he was isolated because of his sin, and now he gives everything over to Jesus. You'll feel like you're completely alone until you truly meet him. And then like Nathanael and like me, you will realize just how much Jesus can change your whole life. And as you grow up in your new life, he opens your eyes more and more to the ways that he can help you and the ways that he can lead you. And finally, Jesus asked Nathanael if he believes only because he saw him under the fig tree. He says, "You will see greater things than this." Let me explain something real quick. There is nothing in your life greater than the moment of your salvation. Amen. There is nothing that can amount to the grace that you are given at the moment of your salvation. However, the moment of your salvation is not the end of your life. It's the beginning. Amen. It is the new birth. It's the moment where you get to start living in freedom. And so from that moment on, that is your life. You were dead before, and now you're alive. And so in your true life, in your new life, let me tell you something. There is nothing greater than living out the things that Jesus calls you to. Amen. And what does he call us to? Two main things. To love him and to love others. Let me tell you something. There's no greater feeling, there's no greater fulfillment, there's no greater purpose than to live out the calling on your life, which is to love God and to love others. How do you love God? You give your life over to him and you live in a faithful obedience. How do you love others? You tell them about it. You tell other people about Jesus. And let me tell you something. That's what Philip did. That's what my brother-in-law now did for me. Invited me to church, told me about Jesus, and led me to the only person that could get me out of my grief, get me out of my pain and my heartache and my brokenness. It was Jesus and only Jesus. Philip was faithful to tell others about him. My brother-in-law was faithful to tell me about him. Are you going to be faithful to tell others about him? Let's pray. Jesus, we love you.